Today we're going to talk about the elements and principles of art. The elements of art are the basic components or building blocks of art. They're considered the alphabet of the visual world. They include color, value, line, texture, shape, form, and space. Color is light reflected from a surface. Color can create emphasis, harmony, emotions, unity, and movement in a piece of artwork. There are three distinct qualities to color: hue, which is the name of the color; value, which is the lightness to darkness of a color; and intensity, which is the brightness to purity to dullness of a color. There are many different theories of color, which we will talk about some during the third quarter when we talk about color theory. You can see two images below. The one on the left is from William Johnson during the Harlem Renaissance. It's called Street Life Harlem. This is from 1940. This image in the brightness of the colors. So the joy is day and activities going on in the community with this couple, as opposed to the image on the right from Pablo Picasso, old man blind with a boy from 1903. The image on the right shows a sense of desperation or sadness in the image with the muted blue colors as well as the expressions on the individuals' faces. So you can see how color can affect you in bringing joy into your life and into the experience that you're having when you're looking at this piece of artwork on the left, compared to being able to touch our emotions and bring out a sense of sadness or depression, uh, a way of looking at the ills of society at that time. And we have value. Value are the shadows from lightness to darkness. Value variation gives a sense of depth to an object, gives it a sense of three-dimensionality, and it builds contrast in value, can create emphasis in an object. You can see the two examples below. One is of a black, gray, and white scale, and the other is adding that scale into the color. So you have the color green, and once you slowly add white to the color, it gets lighter, and once you add black to the color, it gets darker. We have the element of line. Line is a continuous mark made on some surface by a moving point. You have different types of line. You have implied line, which is a line that doesn't really exist but appears to be present. You have actual line, which is a line that is actually present and you can see it. The line can be two-dimensional, three-dimensional, descriptive, implied, or abstract. We have contour lines, blind contour lines, painterly lines, linear lines. Line can suggest movement. For example, a horizontal line can produce a sense of calmness, whereas a diagonal line can cause tension, and a curved line can give us a sense of movement. You can see a couple of examples here. The one on the top left is from Pablo Picasso, The Weeping Woman, and we can see how the use of line and color can give us a sense of distress in the image. You have sharp lines, curved lines, and some zigzag lines, which give us a sense of sadness and fear. The image on the right at the top from Leonardo da Vinci, The Last Supper. This image gives us a sense of depth, where line is used using one-point perspective to give us perspective and depth in the image. The image below on the left is from Monet, one of his water lily collections, and those are painterly lines. Monet is concerned with how light and color interact with each other in the environment. And then you have the image of the plums and the apple and the bowl on the table, where you would have implied lines, the edge of the bowl, for example, or the folds in the cloth, the edge of the plum themselves have implied lines to them. Texture. Texture refers to the way things feel or look as though they might feel if they're touched. They can create emphasis, movement, pattern, or emotion. There are two types of texture. You have implied texture and actual texture. Implied is how it would appear, whereas actual texture is how it really feels and exists in the natural world. It's from the artist Caravaggio. And so St. Thomas, sticking his finger in the wound of Christ. You can see their clothes, the texture and the weight that their clothes would have. You can look at Thomas's forehead and see the texture of his skin and the folds in his brow. The image on the right is of a photograph of a tree up close so you can see the bark in detail. You can imagine, because of touching trees or being close to trees, growing up, how bark feels and the roughness of that image. And then the image below is called Cloud Gate. It's made out of stainless steel. It's located in Chicago. And if you touch that, it's going to be smooth to the touch. It's made out of stainless steel. And it'll probably be cool to the touch too, depending on the time of day and where you were to touch the sculpture. And we have shape. Shape refers to a two-dimensional area, clearly set off by one or more of the other visual elements. For example, color, value, line, texture, and space. A shape is flat, two-dimensional, has length and width. And we have organic shapes and geometric shapes. Organic shapes are curved edges and are continuous, whereas geometric shapes have sharp edges and angles. The image on the top left of Chuck Close, if you zoom in on the image, you can see all the different organic shapes and colors that make the skin tones of the face. And then the image on the right is created with cut paper. You can see different geometric and organic shapes within the image, whereas the one on the bottom is primarily organic shapes created through the shape themselves and paint. We have the element of form. A form is an object with three dimensions. A triangle would become a cone. A circle would become a sphere, and so forth. Forms include height, width, and depth, and can be organic and free-flowing. Forms have mass and volume. The mass is the outside bulk of the form, whereas the volume is the space within the form itself. The example above, which is a marble sculpture of the Pietà, which gave a close-up view of the head of Mary. You can tell, being that the sculpture is made out of marble, it's going to be heavy and dense. Then you have the image below, which is a painting of a coffee cup or a cup with either coffee or some other liquid in it and strawberries. The cup itself is the mass, and the air within the cup and the liquid within the cup would be the volume in it. And then we have the element of space. Space can be thought of as the distance or area between, above, around, below, or within things. It gives us an illusion of depth and space created by size, placement, detail, color, and line, overlapping shapes and forms in front of one another can give a sense of depth, and then also having holes and cavities like caves, it gives us a sense of depth as well. The image chosen for this one is of the crucifixion of Christ. You can see space quite clearly. The space above the people in line where Christ and the two thieves are above. You see them in the space of the sky, and in the crowd below them, filling that space there. You can see the overlapping people in the image, and getting smaller as they go back too, to give a sense of depth. Then you see the crucifixion, the cross is up close and personal, and then as the mountains get smaller going backwards, and the vibrancy of the colors get duller, you see the depth happening in there. And 1 point perspective is being used in this image as well, guiding us. The colors and the shapes and forms in there are guiding us to the center, Christ. And so the principles of how we use and organize those elements to create a successful piece of artwork. So again, the principles of art are different ways the elements can be organized and used in a work of art. These are the tools to create art. The words and sentences of the visual world, whereas the elements were the vocabulary, right, of the visual world. The principles of art are balance, emphasis, harmony, variety, gradation, movement, rhythm, and proportion. Balance gives us a sense of equilibrium or stability to a piece of artwork. We can create balance by arranging the elements so no part overpowers the other or is heavier than the other parts. There are 3 types of balance. Symmetric, which is formal. It has 2 halves that are identical if you split the image in half. You have asymmetric, which is informal. It takes into account qualities of hue, intensity, value, size, and shape, and weight distribution. And then you have radial, which is circular. Objects are positioned around the central part for radial. You have 3 examples here. The top left gives us an example of asymmetric. You can see the bold red at the top left corner and the bottom right corner, and then the black in each. That's given us a sense of balance. You can look at the shapes and how they're lined up, even at a diagonal, giving us that sense of balance. You have at the top right radial balance in a stained glass window, and then you have symmetrical balance in the below image of a mass being celebrated, whereas you have the 2 groups of crowds on both sides close to the font that are large. Then you have the 2 smaller groups in the back, and then the center, which is the sacrificial lamb of Christ on the altar to be sacrificed in the Eucharist. Our next principle is harmony and unity. This deals with the look and feel of wholeness or oneness and order to a work of art. It's combining similar elements to accent their similarities. For example, colors, shapes, lines, textures, and patterns. This can be achieved through the use of repetition and subtle and gradual changes. We can see the repetition in the top left, the use of circles and colors repeated over again. In the bottom left, you can see the repetition of the man, and as he gets smaller and smaller towards the background. So we're using size, and then the balance that's going on in the image on the right, where we're using color, the reds going down, and the large groupings of people. So it has nice balance in this image as well. So the colors are unifying this image. We have movement. Movement is used to create the look and feeling of action and to guide the viewer's eyes throughout the work of art. To create this, we can use patterns, contrast, and line can create this. If you look at the top left image, you see the use of line and how the curved lines bring us around and show us movement, kind of like wind going around the cityscape. The image on the right, which is a sculpture, the movement of the body and the shapes within this image gives us a sense of a man walking swiftly with power. And then we have the image below of the train and the smoke and the steam coming from the train. Gives us a sense of movement in this image. If you were to remove the steam from the the bottom of the train and the smoke coming out of the smokestack of the train, then it would look like it's standing still. And we have rhythm. Rhythm is a careful placement of repeated elements in a work of art to cause visual tempo or beat. It gives us a sense of activity, a sense of vibration, and it indicates movement as well. In each of these images, you can see movement with the use of line and the use of color. And then we have emphasis and contrast. Emphasis and contrast are combining elements to stress the differences between those elements, placing greater attention to certain areas or objects in a piece of work. It directs the viewer to a specific area of a piece of artwork that the artist wants to be seen or noticed the most. It's a way of making it a particular element or object stand out, creating a center of interest. In the top left, you have the image here where the white horse and the gentleman on the horse are the main interest in this image. The image on the right, you have the image of Christ is the main image that needs to be seen here. On the bottom left, the canoes are the main focus, so the contrast is showing us the canoes compared to the background. And then the primary focus is on the bottom right is the image of the gentleman who is being martyred for standing up for his rights in his beliefs. We have proportion. Proportion is the principle of art concerned with the relationship of certain elements to the whole and to each other. It's connected with emphasis. So we see a comparison between sizes of shapes or objects. So the top left, you have this enormously large crab attacking the city. Then you have the image on the right, and you have the umbrellas and how they get smaller as they go backwards. And you have this sense of rhythm and movement that's happening in this image at the bottom left, and the size of the different shapes and colors. Then you have the proportion of the man compared to the shark on the bottom right. So you're able to see how large a shark is compared to the person who either is a bystander or could be the person who caught it. Then we have variety. Variety is concerned with combining art elements with slight changes to increase visual interest, using elements to create intricate and complicated relationships. It's a use of different lines, types, colors, or textures, and it brings diversity and contrast to an image. In the images at the top, right and left, you see the brightness of the colors and how they are giving us a sense of that contrast, that variety of colors and shapes. And then you see the images below, which are more collage type, give us a sense of variety as well, with different textures and shapes and sizes and colors. Give us a complicated and intricate set of patterns and movements going on. And then we have gradation. This is a way of combining elements by using a series of gradual changes in those elements. Larger shapes to smaller shapes, darker hues to lighter hues, shadow to highlights. The image above on the left, you can see the different colors gradually changing. On the photograph of the trees on the right, you can see the trees changing from green to orange to yellow. On the bottom left, you see the gradual change of the people getting smaller and duller as they go backwards. And in the photograph on the right at the bottom, you see the gradual change of the paintbrush and the hand as it moves going through the image. And then we have pattern created by repetition of shape, line, color, and texture. Patterns are two-dimensional decorative effects achieved through the repetition of colors, lines, shapes, and textures. And here are two examples. One example would be called Zentangle, the one on the right, where the use of patterns and changes are going through to create this interesting image. And so the elements and principles communicate the artist's ideas and feelings, has unity and has a wholeness to it. So again, the elements of line, shape, value are the building blocks of the piece of artwork, whereas the principles are how we use those elements to create a successful piece of artwork. Thank you and have a blessed evening.